Hey everyone, this video will be about blocking and getting hit. We'll take a look at the different types of attacks that'll be coming at you and what your options are to defend against them. And since no one can ever block anything, we will take a look at the different kind of things that can happen to you when you get hit. So let's get started. Okay, so to get started, let's take a look at how you block. There are several different ways to get hit, obviously, and blocking is the most fundamental skill there is. But there's really only two ways to block. One is hold backwards, and you will block standing. The other way is to hold down and back, as you can see in the command history down below. You hold down back and you will block crouching. These two methods of blocking cover all your bases, and they each have a different set of moves that they block, and so the ones that don't get blocked by this is how you get mixed up. So let's take a look at the hit levels that attacks can have. There are high, mids, and lows. High attacks that generally target your opponent's head, and when you're in training mode, will flash pink when they connect. There are mid attacks that usually hit your opponent in the midsection, right in the body. These will flash yellow and say middle. And then there are low attacks that target your opponent's feet. These will flash blue. This really kind of helps you get used to learning, the sequence of attacks and what they look like. High, mids, and lows are the three different levels of getting hit. There are also special mids, but these are kind of rare. Every character has this ducking jab. Special mid is just a weird little quirk in the system. You don't really need to be aware of it to play the game correctly. It's just there. High attacks you can block with your standing block, like this. You just hold back to block, and you block highs. However, you can duck highs completely with your crouching block, like this. Notice that goes entirely over my head. When they whiff completely, you can hit them back super hard. You do not want to whiff in this game. Mid attacks you can also block with your standing block, like this. But if you're crouch blocking, you get hit. And finally, low attacks, you block with your crouch block, and you get hit during standing block. So what that tells us is the true mix-up is mid versus low. That's what you have to predict in a match, is mid versus low. High and mid is not a real mix-up because you can beat both of them by just standing block. High versus low is not a mix-up because you beat them both with crouching block. You'll block the low and you'll duck the high completely. Mid versus low is the situation where you have to guess or anticipate what your opponent's going to do. You get hit standing by one and you get hit crouching by the other. There's no universal option. You have to make a read against the mid versus low mix-up. So all of these tools come together to legitimize each other, to keep each other honest. Mids are the most dangerous attacks in the game. Most of your big hits and your basic launchers, these are mid attacks. So if you just stand blocking all day, you'll be okay. The purpose of lows is to keep you from doing that. If you're comfortable just blocking high all day, you're never going to get hit by the good stuff. You need lows to annoy your opponent to force them into ducking. This low doesn't do much damage. 10 measly damage. Heihachi can get hit with this 17 times before he dies. But he's not going to let it get that far. He eventually has to start ducking. He has to be proactive against these lows. So as soon as he starts ducking is when you can hit him with your mid attacks. And everything falls apart from there. The same is true of highs. Because you can duck a high completely and punish them for it, that incentivizes the opponent to start to duck highs when they know they're coming. So highs and lows both encourage your opponent to duck, which when they start ducking, you hit them with your mids, everything works out well, right? They're all designed to counterpart each other correctly. But for the most part in Tekken, you want to stand block all day. You only want to duck when you think you need to block a low or to duck a high completely. If you just stand there all day, you'll block most of the dangerous things in the game, but you'll get hit by lows. So as long as they're not doing a good job of their lows, you'll be okay. If they start really abusing these big lows, you have to respect that. You have to start blocking low at some point, or at least guess on a low. And that's when everything comes into play. You get hit by everything else. So highs and lows both have a big weakness in that highs can be ducked and avoid it completely, you can jump over lows. All jumping attacks like this hop kick or Leo's sky vibration, they will jump over a low cleanly and hit the opponent at the same time. So that's a huge risk. If you go for this jumping attack and they did a low, they're going to get hit by it bad. So highs and lows have that risk, but that risk is worth it because the more you use those, the more they duck, the more it opens up the rest of your attacks. So mids are not perfect. A lot of these big mids are unsafe on block. And every time I do this hop kick and Heihachi blocks it, he can hit me with a headbutt and iron palm for like 40 damage. You can't just throw out mids all day either. You have to balance your attack, you have to use everything that's available, and keep your opponent guessing. Because if they never know when that low is coming, it's going to hit them. And as soon as they think they know a low is coming and it's a mid, they get hit even harder. So that's the basics of how to block the different levels of attack. And then there are parries. A lot of characters in the game have the ability to parry some of your attacks. In the beginning, this was rare, only Paul, Nina maybe had this. And what they would just do is grab your hand or your foot and throw you to the ground and kick you, which is kind of like a throw animation. And in fact, this was done by just pressing back plus throw. You see when I press back plus the throw buttons, she reaches out to try to grab your attack. And that's all they do, grab your attack and reverse it. That looks like this. Grab it, attack them, and they end up on the ground. And that's it. It stops their attack cold, and they take some damage for it. In Tekken 7, there are a ton of different versions of parries now. Leo has a unique one of her own, where she just flips your attack off to the side, and then once you've plopped to the ground, she can retaliate with a punch. Jin has one where he just throws your attack to the side and does whatever he wants to you. It's crazy. Noctis deflects your attack with a sword and counterstrikes. Now, for the most part, these parries only work against high or mid attacks. There are some exceptions. Headbutts and elbows and stuff like that generally can't be parried. It's meant to only work on hands and feet. But as we mentioned, there's a lot of different rules. Noctis can parry almost everything because he's deflecting with his sword. A reversal like this doesn't work when it's a shoulder, right? You can't just grab a person's shoulder. So there are rules to it, but for the most part, this parry is effective against high or mid attacks. If it's a low, you'll just get hit. Regular hit, I don't think you get counter hit during most of these parries. But this is just you trying to be a little more proactive on defense. Rather than blocking, safe mid attacks all day, you can try to reverse one of them and turn the tables. So this loses to low attacks, but every character in the game has a universal low parry. When you block a low, you usually get some form of reward for making a good read like this. You can punish them for it and hit some damage. Leo gets 34 off of that, but that's not common. Most characters can't hit you back that hard for blocking a simple little generic low poke. But every low in the game, with again some few exceptions, can be low parried. So instead of holding down back, you press down forward in time with their low attack like this. But these, you can get a whole combo from. In Tekken 7, you have access to your whole combo path. You can use your tailspin, you can carry them to the wall, use rage drive, whatever it might be. You can deal a huge amount of damage in a low parry situation. So rather than having to block a quick low where all you get in return is, 10 or 11 damage, if you can parry it, you can deal 80 damage back to them. It's a huge amount of reward for you for making a good read. But if you're wrong, and it's a mid attack instead, you get hit by the mid, right? So it's the same situation as just blocking low. But instead of blocking, if you try to parry, you can get a much bigger reward out of the situation. So it's worth thinking about these in terms of, quick little pokes. If it's a big low attack, like this for example, Heihachi would rather block that, because when this gets blocked, you can hit him back with a much stronger attack rather than the parry. The low parry is more effective against tiny little low pokes that are generally safer. If you make a good read against one of these, the rewards are excellent. Tekken 7 has introduced another new method to play defense, so to speak, in the form of moves called Power Crush. What these are moves that basically have armor properties, as it would be referred to in most games. You can tell them by that white crackle effect around them, and if you look in the move list, they will have that red symbol next to them of the shield with the character in it. This is telling you that these moves will armor through your opponent's attack and deliver no matter what. When Leo does this strike, she does not get hit out of it. She will absorb the hits. She will armor the hits and then continue to attack the opponent. So when that happens, it looks like this. You can see how Heihachi kicked her. She took a little bit of damage and she flashed, but it did not stop her from carrying on and delivering her attack. This is a sort of a form of parry that kind of takes out the guesswork, so to speak. You don't have to worry about what's coming, but this follows the same rules as conventional parries in that it only works against highs and mids. If a low attack hits you during this state, it'll stop you. You take counter hit damage, as far as I believe, too. Whereas normally when you armor through the attack, you take damage, but you take like half damage. So it's not the best option. You'd be better off blocking if you knew what was coming, but if you didn't know, what they were going for, this armor type of move beats almost everything except those lows. Those lows shut it down completely. In addition to that, throws. If you get thrown during the windup of a power crush move like this, that throw becomes unbreakable. That's the only situation in all of Tekken where you lose the ability to break throws. It's not an end-all be-all, but it is kind of like a simpler option to get you out of trouble. Your back is to the wall and you're, not sure what to do and you're a little bit shook. You can use these armored moves to just kind of get them off you real quick. They work really well for that, but a lot of them have risks. All the armor moves that are all mids, they're all going to be unsafe on block. If they bait it out, if they, stop their attack and you just do this in the middle of nowhere, they could punish you for it. In addition to the fact that lows can blow it up entirely, you'll take counter hit damage and you'll wish that you hadn't. But nonetheless, it is a method of playing defense in terms of getting your opponent to stop hitting you. This can turn the tables on them very quickly. So just kind of a quick summary of what we've learned here. Most dangerous attacks in the game are mids. Your counter hit fishers, your big launchers, the huge knockdowns. Most of these attacks, the most dangerous attacks, are mids. Not to say there aren't others that are dangerous. This move is very dangerous from Leo. Let's not kid ourselves. But that's not a super common. Mids are the biggest threat in the game. Everything else exists to complement that. You have to stand up to block mids, so the name of your game offensively is to force your opponent into ducking for the most part, so they start getting hit by mids and vice versa. So the general rule of thumb in this game is to just stand block. You want to be standing most of the time and only duck when you anticipate a low or a high or anything like that. A lot of 2D games are generally the opposite. You spend that entire game in crouch block and all you have to look out for are overheads or jump-ins, right? Which you can see coming. Everything else gets beaten by low. This game is not. The hit level system is different, such that you want to be standing. Most risks are handled by standing block. You only duck when necessary. Because ducking is as much a risk for you as it was for them to go for, other options, right? Highs can be ducked and lows can be jumped over. So managing that risk comes with patience, but realistically, you stand most of the time and you only duck when you need to. But once you get a better sense of when it is that you'll need that, is when you start getting much better at the game. So as we covered, you can get hit by blocking incorrectly. You can get hit while sidestepping a move that tracks you. You can also get hit while you are trying to attack yourself if their move happens to connect first. This result is called a counter hit. Every attack takes a certain amount of time, measured in animation frames, to make impact. This is called a move startup. A jab takes 10 frames to hit you. This hop kick is 15 frames, for example. If you get hit before that 10 or 15 frames, it will result in a counter hit. This is much more dangerous than just any natural hit, since there are numerous extra properties that can come from counter hits only, like extra damage or entire combos. For the most part, the faster move wins out. If we both did our jab at the exact same time, it would trade. Like the end of Rocky 3 with the painting where they both punch each other at the exact same time. Our jabs would trade, and we both get hit and we both take the damage. But if I did my jab just 1 frame faster, just a 60th of a second faster, it would hit him first and it would become a counter hit. Where it starts to get a little more complicated is while you're getting hit or blocking or doing anything, characters take different amounts of times to complete those actions. Any hit or block has animation, and each character has to finish that animation before returning to normal and able to move again. This is called a move's recovery. Once a character has fully recovered and returned to normal, they can perform their next move. So if one character recovers faster in a situation, they can act before their opponent, and therefore will always have the edge in speed. This situation is called a frame trap. A character has the frame advantage because they can act a few frames sooner. Most of the time when you land an attack successfully, you will have that advantage. Leo connects this jab, and you can see on the display the +8 in blue. This means she recovers 8 frames faster than Heihachi does and can attack again 8 frames sooner. This can also happen when moves are blocked. You can see Leo's down 2 says +4, and it forces the opponent to crouch. These are both huge frame traps. These are both situations where if Heihachi decides to attack you, he would lose and he would get hit first and would produce this counter hit. That's the goal of a situation like this. If you frame trap your opponent and they try to attack you, your faster attack will counter hit them. Your attack is already starting to hit them while they are just winding up. And this can happen in 1 frame, it can be a 10 frame difference. It doesn't matter. As long as the one attack strikes during another attack startup, it will counter hit. Obviously, if you do a move that's like 87 frames long, they can still beat you to the punch, so to speak. A low-risk move with a good counter-hit property, like a lot of characters that have magic 4s, for example, are a good choice here. But since most players will recognize things like down 2 as a frame trap, they will know better than to try to attack you and fail doing it. But you can still use this hesitation to continue offense however you like. If they respect the trap, you maintain control. You still have a little bit of timing advantage. That's why you don't want to take too big of a risk going for this counter hit, in case they know it's coming and bait it out. But counter hits are a major part of the game at this point in its lifespan, and absolutely worth setting up for, or just fishing for if a situation like this occurs. Most of the time when you get hit, it's because you were blocking incorrectly or you got hit moving or anything like that. As long as you don't get hit while you're attacking, this is just referred to as a natural hit. You just get hit under normal circumstances, nothing fancy results from it. Just getting hit is called a natural hit. So if you have a sequence of attacks, like Leo's forward 2-2 for example, this is a natural combo because the whole string is guaranteed as long as the first one connects. This is a natural hit, nothing fancy. All I did was hit him with the first forward 2. The second attack is guaranteed. So this is a natural combo if the whole thing combos under natural hit. Makes sense, right? So let's take a look at something different. Her down forward 1-2 attack. Notice Heihachi can block that second hit. It is not guaranteed. This is just a natural hit, and the second hit does not hit him. So this is not considered a natural combo. However, if I turn on the counter hit property, which is very easy to do, the next attack I do will be a counter hit. You can see in blue on the left side of the screen, this down forward 1 is now registering as a counter hit. Down forward 1-2 hits him, whereas he could block this previously. This is a combo on counter hit, but not on natural hit. This is a pretty important distinction to learn because a lot of 2, 3, 4 hit strings are not natural combos. Those last hits can be blocked under normal circumstances, but if you catch them in a counter hit, you can do a ton more damage. There are lots of characters that have a good situation. Leroy, for example, can throw out his 1-1 jab, just throw out 1-1s, but as soon as you see it hit, if you could see it hit as a counter hit, you can do the whole rest of the string and hit him for like 40 damage. So under normal circumstances, he doesn't get anything. And this is common for a lot of strings. If they can block it under natural hit, usually on counter hit, the string will connect. So you need to learn a lot of those through experience, get used to what your character does, realize why are they blocking this attack? Because it's not a natural combo. So you have to start thinking about that move in terms of how do I land this as a counter hit so it does work and I don't get punished for it. Next up, let's look at some of the other properties that result from getting counter hit. So I have the computer Jin set to automatically counter hit. As soon as he hits me, it will be a counter hit. So what he's going to do is do his back forward 2 attack, and look what happens to me. You see how I kind of crumple forward there? And he just hop kicks me right up in the air and then gets a whole combo. This kind of stun is pretty common. A crumple over, you fall backwards, you slump to the ground, whatever it might be. Counter hits will produce this effect a lot. This particular stun, however, you can escape. by just pressing forward or backwards. And these can be different for several different kinds of stuns in the game. Not all of them can be escape, but some of them can, and you need to be aware of this. This kind of thing you learn, by playing with other people, and they'll tell you this, or you can just practice against the computer. Why am I getting hit by this? This seems so unfair. You can go into practice mode and record just like this and try to figure out what happens. When you do that, you realize, if I get hit by this, and I just block, I'm okay. I can actually block before he hits me with anything. But I have to actively block. If I just sit there and do nothing, I get hit. I have to break out of the stun by pressing forward or back. And those are all, like I said, those are often different. They're not always the same. But in this case, you just block and you'll be okay. So it's up to you to learn how to deal with some of these things, recognize via practice mode what kind of stuns are possible. Let's take a look at another kind of stun that we call nosebleed. The animation basically looks like the character is grabbing their face like their nose is bleeding, their head tips back. Looks like this. You can see in that instant after the second punch, you kind of lean backwards. Right there, their hands are up and they get hit in the face. This whole combo is guaranteed for Elisa. I don't know how much damage that's doing, but it's a lot. Watch it again. That's 90-something damage from that little combo, from this nosebleed stun. Your head leans back and you kind of grab your face and you get comboed. But check this out. You can escape this one by holding down. Looks a little different than the other one too. Boop. You just fall to the ground. And whatever she does misses cleanly. In this case, the nosebleed animation leaves you vulnerable, like the case with Jin. You can get hit during that, but you escape it by pressing down. And pressing down, in this case, makes you fall towards the ground. So if she was going to go for the attack, she doesn't have time to really, confirm what's happening. She kind of has to go for it. And that's, the case with a lot of these. They sort of have to make the guess and just go for it. And if you did escape, their attempt would likely miss. And there are other cases of this. Noctis has one where he hits you with a rising knee attack and then does a warp strike with his sword. If you hold down and you fall to the ground, the sword strike will miss. Otherwise, it will hit you. But again, they know this, right? They might fake you out and not go for it and just hit you while you're on the ground. Everything in Tekken is a mix-up. Everything is a guess. It's a constant mind game. But be aware that, for the most part, you should escape stuns where possible because they could just hit you so much harder. And again, it is also possible for them to fake you out, etc., etc. You could do this all day long. Well, I know that you know that I know that you know that I'm going to escape it. All right, the next kind of hit to look at is called guard break. It's a terrible name for it. I think it's just a translation thing from way back in the day. It's called guard break and it'll be written as GB, but it's actually blocking. Guarding is the only thing you can do. So it's a very weird name, but it's just what it happens to be called. Certain counter hits cause this animation that looks like this. I back down to the ground and I immediately stand right back up. This is a long animation. This is a full half second where I fall to the ground and stand up. But all you can do is guard. It's the only thing you can do. I don't know why it's called guard break. You can't sidestep, you can't attack, you can't do anything. You can't do any buttons, all you can do is guard, which is fine. In this case, Fang is going to try to hit me with his shoulder while I'm standing back up, and look what happens. I just block the shoulder. All I do is just hold block while I'm falling to the ground, and I will block whatever comes next. It's a 30-40 frame window or whatever, so you would think, oh, well, if they can't do anything for 30 frames, let me just hit them. You can block. That shoulder is 13 frames of some of the fastest attacks in the game. Clearly, I'm still standing up when he tries to hit me with it. I instantly stand up and block it. It cancels out of my stun, it escapes the stun, and allows me to block. So again, Fang players would have to know that I'm going to do this. They can't just throw that shoulder out. The risks are too bad. But what you're going to see more often than not is a Fang player will try to get something out of that situation. They will most likely do that. They'll try to hit you with the low afterward, which is almost always going to work. When you see this animation stun, your instinct says, okay, I better block before something goes bad. And you're going to block standing. So that makes that low pretty good. You know what I mean? Your brain is not going to say, oh, I better block a low right here. It's kind of like a panic mode sort of reaction. So it's a mix-up for Feng, right? He has this whole period of time where you can't do anything but block, so he's going to challenge your block by going for mid or low or whatever it is. So that's another stun animation called Guard Break. As you can see, terrible name. Guarding is the best thing. It's the only thing you can do right there. We glanced on the topic of frame data for just a little bit. The idea that some moves are faster, some moves are slower, and a lot of moves have recovery. Once you do a move, it takes a minute for you to go back to normal before you're able to do anything else. This concept is how a lot of counter hits arise, right? Because I take advantage of situations where I can be faster, or I know that I'm going to lose and I'll just block. Now, block stun is just the idea of the amount of time you're in an animation during blocking. Hit stun is the same thing. Whenever Feng takes this punch in the face, we saw earlier, this left me at +8, meaning I'm 8 frames faster. We both have animation, right? My hand comes back to neutral and his head comes back to neutral before we can do anything. I'm 8 frames faster. So during this window is what we call hit stun, right? This is hit stun. There are some situations where this hit stun is so severe you can get hit again. It's not technically a stun like the other ones that we saw. It's just a period of time where you can't do anything. You are still animating the hit stun. You can't block like the last case. You can't hold down. You can't do anything. You are in pure hit stun. This move is so dangerous, you are animating the pain for a certain amount of time. Now, a case that's really dangerous is Feng doing his one jab from a back turn position. I'm going to show you the whole thing at once and just look what can possibly happen. I was blocking that. I got hit by the jab and I started blocking. I am unable to block there. Let me turn the frame data viewer back on and you'll see what's happening. So with the frame data viewer on, in this case Feng is just going to hit me with the jab and look what happens. Says he is +14. That's a huge number. This is all hit stun. This is not any kind of crumple, juggle animation or anything like that. It's pure hit stun. I'm reeling backwards, trying to grab my face. I can't do anything during this animation. And he recovers so quickly, 14 frames faster, in fact, that he can hit me with a 13 frame attack. That's what we see in this case. That shoulder is guaranteed because it's able to hit me during that 14 frame window. There's nothing you can do about that. That is pure hit stun. You take this hit, that second hit is guaranteed. No way around it. Now, these are not going to be super common in Tekken. There are not a lot of things where I can hit you like that and you're reeling so bad I can just hit you again. These are pretty rare, but they do exist. Horong used to have a dirty one, a kick that was like +20 something. And if you didn't duck it and it blocked it, you just blocked that move and he could hit you for free. That was block stun that was like +20 or whatever it was. You just stand there, I'm chilling, nothing's wrong, I'll just block this kick real quick, and he can punch you. Your block is so severe that he gets to hit you for free. They've since changed that, but there are a few things like that in the game. The hit stun from taking that Feng jab is so severe that he can follow up for free. This principle also applies to the back for the most part. If you take attacks from the side or from the back, the hit stun is the same as what it was, but they can't turn around in time. Normally, it takes like 6 frames, I want to say, for a character to turn around. So if you were to get really into the numbers, you could find situations where you get like guaranteed follow-ups in the back. But for the most part, you cannot block while you're back turned at all. So as long as you can keep them in some kind of hit stun, you can just do whatever you want to them. In this case, this string 1-2-1-1, you can see is not a natural combo. Feng blocks those second 2 hits. No problem there. But if I hit him in the back, he can't do anything about it. He can't block in the back. And there are certain situations where I don't have to go for the knockdown. I could just do like 1-2-1 and then go for another attack, right? Because that has hit stun. 1-2-1, he's in a certain amount, you know, he's recovering from getting punched. And it takes an additional time for him to turn around and be able to block again. So there are situations where you can find particular follow-ups to do stuff like that. So getting hit in the side, you got to be pretty far off to the side for that to count. See, that's still like close enough. You got to be all the way back here to be able to hit them in the back. But when that happens, they cannot block a lot of things. So keep that in mind, that you can get much more than you normally would. Most simple strings like this will now be natural combos because they can't turn around and block when they normally could just block straight up. This is another way to get hit, which is to get maneuvered around so severely that they can hit you in the back. So that pretty much covers blocking and getting hit. You get hit by blocking incorrectly. You can get hit while sidestepping by an attack that tracks sidestepping. You can get hit while trying to attack them yourself if you're too slow. You can get hit by attacking when it's not your turn. Frame traps prevent you from taking your turn. You should not attack during a known frame trap. It happens all the time. So that's pretty much the basics of how to get hit or not in Tekken. So the last thing to really cover is once you do get hit and you get knocked down to the ground, you can also get hit while you're on the ground. So let's take just a quick look at some of the options that you might have to get away from other follow-ups, right? It's almost like being in a stun state. You get hit and knocked to the ground. Like usually their thing's pretty far away when I hit him from that, right? But I can do that and I can run up and I'm right on top of him before he does it again. So it is a way of continuing offense. Getting knocked down is usually pretty bad. Getting punched in the face like this, that's no big deal. But if you get knocked down, you're in such a worse situation. You give them a much better potential to continue to harass you with offense, whatever it might be. Okay, so I'm going to get hit by Feng's shoulder, and it's going to put me on the ground, as you might expect. Like that. Now I lay on the ground, and I stop. If I don't press anything, I'll just lay there. And again, everything in Tekken is a valid strategy. Everything is a mix-up. Everything has potential. You can lay on the ground, and obviously they can hit you. If he just does like a down 4 kick, it'll hit me on the ground. So staying on the ground can be one thing, because the sooner you stand back up, in the example I showed by getting hit by this, I run right up on you, or if I do it again, you know, I'll run up and I'll do it again. The sooner you stand up is the sooner you put yourself in a situation to get mixed up again. Because in this kind of a knockdown, you're right, the attacking player has a huge advantage. They can put you in a mix-up again, make you defend mid or low, especially because while you're standing up, you can't sidestep right away, you can't attack right away. You're in a bad mix-up opportunity when you get knocked down. If you stand right up, you're asking for trouble in a lot of cases because that's what they want. The sooner you stand up, the sooner they can mix you again. So, the best way, the most common way to get up in, excuse me, in Tekken 7 is to just hold back. Whoops, I'm supposed to get hit by that. You can see as I hold back, she kind of just slinks to her feet, no problem. This is what you're going to see the most often. Because I'm so far away from the impact, I just get right back to my feet and I'm alright. But keep in mind, they're going to run up there. This is usually safer in this game because of the distance. In previous games, it was not. If you tried to roll away from them, you would get floated and comboed, all kind of nasty stuff. In Tekken 7, they made that a generally safe way to get out of trouble. Just get hit by something and hold back, and you'll be alright. Depends on how quickly they can cover the distance. So if they do cover the distance, and you're worried they might want to run up and hit you, tech roll is the next best option that you have. And this is done by tapping a button as soon as you hit the ground. If you look at your controller, kind of think about it as a top-down sort of view, the 2 punch buttons will make you roll into the background. The 2 kick buttons will make you roll towards the camera. Doesn't matter which one, they both do the same thing. So punches make you go away, kick buttons make you roll toward. Generally doesn't make too much of a difference other than like, you know, just your general position in the stage. But when you hit, right before you hit the ground, you press either one of these buttons, and you can just kind of mash it out. It does not have to be precise. You can in fact hear my controller when I do it. You can hear me mashing that punch button. You hear me mashing that kick button. As long as you're pressing it when you hit the ground, you'll instantly roll to the side when you do so. You have a tiny little bit of invincibility right there. You can't get hit by normal follow-ups during that roll. The drawback is once you've completed rolling, you stand up. You can't lay on the ground any further. You can't do anything else. You're forced to stand up. Which, like I said, it does have the potential to get you mixed up. It can be dangerous, but you're going to tech roll in a situation where you think they're going to try to hit you on the ground, right? They're going to try to harass you, hit you, and hit you, hit you. You tech roll to the side, you're good. But if they stop and they bait that out, obviously, you know, that's everything in Tekken. If you get baited out, it happens. Tech rolling is generally pretty safe because it gets you right to your feet and it gets you out of, like, you know, follow-up. They run up and try to do this, you'll roll off to the side and they'll miss and you'll be okay. So tech rolling is pretty good. You can stay on the ground and not do anything and try to bait out an attack. In that situation, you can just roll to the side manually, but this is a little different. This case, it's done entirely by your left punch button. I'm laying on the ground, and I use my left hand to roll myself over. If I just press left punch, I roll away. If I press down and left punch, I roll towards. The reason why it's only left punch is because the other buttons do different things. When you're on the ground, you can press kicks to get up with kick attacks. The 2 button has some other functions, so 1 button is the only way you get up. Just think about it as pushing yourself off the ground with your left hand. You press down to move towards, you press nothing to move up. So you stay on the ground, and you can stay there after this situation. I don't have to get up yet. And a character like Lei Wulong that has competent fighting skills on the ground, this is a very valuable tool. So you can lay on the ground, and you have still plenty of other options. It's not worth going over all of them. You can roll backwards, you can spring kick, blah, blah, blah. There's tons of ways. And again, that's kind of another lesson of scope, right? We're not really talking about it. We're just talking about getting hit and what can happen after you get hit. And in knockdown situations, you know, here's what you can do. You have an option during stuns to escape the stun in most cases. When you get knocked on the ground, you have an option to get out of further offense too. That's all I'm really going for here. So I think those are like the most common ways. You just hold back and you'll stand up okay, or you can press a button right as you hit the ground to tech roll. And there are tons and tons of other variations. Certain attacks where you cannot tech roll, that are generally called a spike, you can get hit right into the ground. And there's nothing you can do about it. You have to sit there for a second before you can then engage one of your other options. You cannot tech roll it. These are actually kind of useful because you're at their whim. You have to either let them hit you again or, you know, again, play the game of will they, won't they. So that's pretty much the basics of getting up off the ground once you have gotten hit. And that's going to happen, you know, several times per match. The comfort level with it, what should I do, when should I do, it comes with experience. But just be aware that once you've gotten hit, it's not over, right? Like if you get hit, they have a big frame advantage, they're going to press their offense. If you get hit and get knocked down, they have an even bigger advantage, they're going to press their offense. So it's important to know what happens to you when you get hit, and you know, like the same applies to them. When you knock them down, make sure you don't waste that opportunity. You don't want to just go in gung-ho straight at them. Anytime you do something recklessly in a straight line like that in Tekken, you're asking for trouble. But it is a good opportunity for you to continue your offense, or not, right? Or fake them out, whatever it might be. So I think that pretty much covers everything that I had in mind. How to block, the different ways to block, how you can get hit by just not blocking correctly, getting counter hit, getting knocked to the ground, and then staying on the ground, you can get hit again. You can get up and you can get hit again, right? It's a constant evolution of playstyle between you and your opponent. So hopefully that wasn't too cumbersome to explain the basics. And even if you are a Tekken player already and you watch this, maybe you thought, oh, I never really thought about it that way. Maybe, you know what I mean? Hopefully this can maybe give you a little bit of insight to some of the ideas that go in behind the theory of blocking, not just block and retaliate, right? There's a little bit more to it than that. There's a strategy, there's a mind game in everything you do. So maybe that helps you out a little bit too, even if you already know what you're doing. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys will come back for the next video in the sequence. So click the subscribe button down below, turn on the little bell so you do get notifications when these things happen, and hopefully I will see you in that next video. Later.